The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And my head's chopped off.
And mine is almost chopped off. So I'm glad that you got a bigger head than I have. No,
I guess they had to push it down for the people who used the studio before us. Maybe they were shorter.
Yeah.
It always makes for an interesting time. But thank you. This is CJ, and a few programming announcements. If you're watching us right now at 10 a.m., you're watching us on YouTube, and yes, our show is going out live on YouTube at 10 a.m. as usual. If you are watching us on Channel 95, Fall River Community Television, that at 6 o'clock tonight because of the 5 o'clock broadcast of North Pole Live. So if you have children or grandchildren, put them in front of the TV, get them a phone, and make a phone call to North Pole Live, and they can talk to Santa Claus. And as they're watching TV, they'll hear some stories, and it should be an interesting time. I've helped out with this event a couple of times in the past, and I'm sure that in a couple of times more in the future I'll be helping out again. But it's kind of small this year. We're just coming out of COVID and the restrictions, so we're keeping it a little small here at the studio, and that's okay by me. So.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll call tonight, disguise my voice, ask Santa for some presents, you know?
There you go.
And, but yeah, it's a great thing. Have the kids look in. It's really, it's good. And welcome the holiday season. But I'm looking at my phone. I get a little message, gunshots heard around Flint and Bedford Street again. So, but remember, so what did we say, 75,600, and I'm off the top of my head, so 49 calls they made. That was a while back, so we must be up to about 76,000 by now. But again, we have the manipulation of facts like they do in mainstream media. This morning I already got a call that it was on the radio. They're all celebrating today the ribbon cutting of the Freetown.
Yes.
The free there every
at 9:30. As a matter of fact, a half an hour ago it happened.
And guess what? To get you even more excited, see, I was so excited when I heard this. We got a new train. We got a new train. We didn't get a used one. We got a new train. The only problem is, unless that train is stuffed with money for the 63% of the people who are poor in this city, I don't see, you know, it's just a mode of transportation. But then again, it's another in the line of the panaceas for Fall River's problems. One thing will fix everything, and that's not true. You know, the Battleship Cove, that was going to cure us. The HMS Bounty, that was going to, the carousel with the Derby horses, that was going to fix us. Calling us a gateway city was going to fix us. You know, the bottom line is you can call me anything you want, but don't call me late for dinner. The reality is that none of this stuff, listen, it's a stinking train. If you think that train, I'll tell you what, if you think that train is going to fix this city, I'm a betting man. I'll bet you. Come over here and tell me. I'm not saying that if your definition of fixing is that the rents went up and the value of houses went up, which is a negative to poor people, but apparently most of the people on the city council who aren't poor have forgotten that. So again, we have everything is in the eyes of the beholder. You know, the perspective. The perspective of rich people is different because we saw what Bloomberg said before, and he's added another one to that, basically, and they don't care about poor people. You know, you can't afford meat, eat beans. You can't afford a car, gas, ride a bus, and if you can't afford to feed your dog and take it to the vet, let it die. Who cares? And then he made some other ridiculously callous statement recently, and I just erased it from my mind because Bloomberg lasted about 35 seconds in his presidential run. Once the people saw what a little hypocrite he is, and he really doesn't care about anybody except rich people, he disappeared. But he continues to reinforce that. But we have the people over here that are pretending they care about the people. Oh, 63%. That means we can put brand new fire apparatus where we don't need it. One of the least busy areas of the city, which doesn't make public safety sense. But then again, all the people weighing in on public safety got nothing to do with public safety, basically, and they have no experience in public safety. But what do we have here? We have, again, a situation where, look at the parade. The parade got canceled.
Yep.
I'm going to make a prediction. We may see that parade because they weren't going to reschedule it, but now people are on the internet making a lot of noise. People are making a lot of noise throughout the community. So they will, I would not be surprised if they now said, oh yeah, we were going to reschedule. He just didn't tell you that. Don't worry about it.
Well, actually, the organizer of that event turned around and said, the parade is canceled. Happy holidays. We'll see you next year.
Yeah.
So, kind of pretty clear, and that's the organizer. That's recreation, or recreation, or whatever they want to go by this time around.
Who, by the way, gets some funding from us too, right?
They get some money from community development block grant funds, and they got money from ARPA.
Yeah, CJ, I gotta ask you a really, a question that I've been pondering over the weekend and stuff. Last year they gave him $75,000 for a parade, and this year they give him $63,000.
Yes.
Can you explain to me how you can spend $63,000 or $75,000 on a parade? Aren't most of those floats sponsored?
Yes. They come from the local schools.
And they're sponsored. Too,
right.
By people.
Right.
They get a little bit of advertisement during a parade.
Yes, they do.
So what are we paying for?
That's what I wanted to know.
They don't have the parade in the middle of the night, so we have to pay the electric bill that we pay anyway. What are we paying for?
I know we're not paying for police.
We're not paying for police. I just want to know who's getting the money. I want to know who got the 75 grand last year and who's getting the 63 grand this year, and how you can say that a parade full of people that are there not getting paid to march cost that kind of money.
As I said in the weekend flush, I think that the federal government should do an audit, not only on recreation, but also on the city, on all the ARPA money.
Exactly, that's what you said.
Because it's all done back doors and hidden and like it's some big secret. And when you ask questions about it, you don't get the answers. But when you have city councilors asking questions, they get printouts.
Yeah, but then you know what you are when you ask questions? You're an opera denier.
Yeah.
That's a nice label we can stick on him now. You're a saw. Shut up, you saw.
That's it. That's right. I'm a saw.
You're a saw.
Yeah.
Stop it. Because the city, we don't care if this city is an eyesore, spelled differently, by the way, for you people who are not really that great at, understanding that there are two saws, like there are two weathers. There's weather, and whether or not. But, this is the reality. We get nothing but mixed messages. And then let's segue into something else. Tomorrow's a big day. Huge election in Georgia.
Yes, it is.
Big election in Georgia.
Right.
And they're pulling out all the guns.
Yes, they are.
And they don't care. They don't care. It's all about power. On both sides. It's all about power because Warnock, the only reason Warnock isn't the most radical person ever elected to the Senate is because Fetterman's in there now. They don't care if these people don't care. They're going to let criminals out. They're gonna do whatever it takes, and but it's just about them getting power because it's not about the people. The government has forgotten the people on every level, and this is a problem. We have gotten, it's all about their absolute power. So we're going to see what happens tomorrow. It's going to be, I'll be watching.
It's going to be interesting because they're saying it's a close race.
Yeah.
And I just have a gnawing feeling that the Democrats are going to take that seat. You know why? And here's why. As we've seen with this mail-in ballot bull, because that's exactly what it is, it's bull, Democrats don't like to go to the polls. They would rather mail their ballot in. Republicans, on the other hand, want to go to the polls. I don't know what it is, but the party has to really start changing their methods from going to the polls to using mail-in ballots. And what was one of the interesting things that was said, and I'm not an election denier, don't get me wrong, and I heard this also from Tom Hodgson yesterday on the news. He said mail-in ballots are subject to corruption. He said it, and they are.
Yeah, well,
and he says, I heard from someone that they received a ballot from somebody else, so they filled it out and sent it back. What's to stop people from doing that? What's to stop people from filing for those ballots? You don't even have to go into the office to file for the ballot. You go online to the Secretary of State's office and get the ballot.
No, look, you're 100% right. And I'm not an election denier either, but I am. The reality is that this no longer is an election. It's ballot harvesting.
Yeah.
What they've created, because the Democrats do that well. Now, this is not fiction. I've seen the videos of them during the presidential election bringing hundreds of ballots to the ballot drop-off boxes at 2 o'clock in the morning and dropping them off. And they said a lot of those ballots only had one check mark for a particular candidate, Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. And at the close of the polls, Trump was ahead, and then there was enough ballots and it was a very close election in many states, swing states, not total, but in the swing states that mattered, we're talking about a very small amount of votes. But they are subject, and I agree with a lot of these other people. Listen, unless you're infirmed, which we always had that
I was going to say that's the way it used to be.
Always, yeah. We should have, and I agree with this, we should have an election day. And it should be a holiday, and everybody should get their pay. And the only thing you got to do is go to the polls. And if you're too damn lazy to get up your butt, because you're right, people get a ballot, and we had all kinds of questions. How many people in nursing homes who can't remember their name voted? This opens this up to a lot of abuse. Who's voting? The elderly individual with dementia, or one of their relatives, or somebody on the staff, or exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't about a fair and equitable election. This is all about who can get power. And you're right, the Republican Party, they're into voting their way in, where the Democratic Party is into harvesting ballots and getting in.
Right.
And that is subject to corruption. Whether you like that, whether you want to agree or not, bottom line is I got a ballot in. Mm-hmm. I didn't ask for a ballot. I never mail in a ballot. I go to the polls every single election. Maybe not the primary if I'm not interested in an individual who needs a primary vote, but I have voted in every single election basically since I got out of the military, the final election. And I think I like to go to the polls. I like to, see the people working at the polls. I like to see how the crowds are looking and things. But it's just, it's your right. It's your duty.
It's your social thing.
It's your civic duty. And then you have no excuse to say that you got the government that you deserve. But now when you get ballots and you get the last election, and granted, there may not have been enough to overturn the election, but the reality is they had people that have been dead since the Civil War, they found in some states in the last presidential election. They found ballots of people that had moved and voted in another state. So, I mean, you can't have this. And then the Democrats are complaining about, we don't want voter ID. You need an ID to buy a pack of cigarettes. You need an ID to buy alcohol. You need an ID to get into a federal building. I guess there is an exception to that. If you're an illegal, then you don't need anything.
Well, what's interesting is Sheriff Hodgson said that yesterday. He said, we should require that people go to the polls and have a photo ID with them. And I've agreed with that. Not because I'm Democrat or Republican, because I believe we need to do that. I believe we need to have the checks and balances necessary so that these election deniers don't have grounds to deny.
Yeah, well, they call you an election denier when you require an ID. And look, don't give me the crap that they can't get IDs. We've been voting for 200 years, and nobody ever said it's discriminatory. The reality is you can go down and get an ID at the city hall. You can go down to the registry. They can come up with something. You are not suppressing elections by ensuring that the individual who's casting a ballot is that individual. You are maintaining the integrity of that election. It's just the opposite of what the Democrats are trying. This ridiculous thing of, like, you can be, it's voter suppression because somebody can't identify themselves. No, it isn't. It's just the opposite. It's opening the election to fraud because you don't have to prove who you are. Well, Mary Jones comes in to vote. They go, Mary, you already voted. But it actually was a guy, but he identified as a woman, and therefore he said he was you. So I guess if you can figure out who you are and what you are based on how you wake up in the morning, you can determine, you can assume somebody else's identity to vote. It's a big deal to get an ID.
Well, what's interesting on that is Rhode Island, and I'm not sure if they still do it, our producer would know, but Rhode Island required photo IDs.
Yeah.
And to address the thing that people don't have IDs, the canvasser's office had to issue the IDs if people didn't have a driver's license or valid identification. And they had to go to the canvasser's office and get the ID, and I guess they didn't pay for it. Yeah. And that didn't seem to suppress any voting in Rhode Island.
It doesn't.
Now, I don't know if they still do it, but I remember when they did that. Oh, they do still do it. Thank you, Steve. Rhode Island still does require.
Well, good for Rhode Island.
Good for Rhode Island.
Pat on the back for Rhode Island. You're right. But, the absurdity of this, that you say that you shouldn't require somebody to prove who they are to cast a ballot, and then you spin this tangled web of saying that, and look at the insanity of what we had. Nevada took, 2 weeks to count votes? I mean, we had massive presidential elections where it was called at 11 o'clock that night, nationally. Right. Why? But now, they pass, well, we're going to tabulate them a week after. We got up to 2 weeks. Nevada was absurd. But isn't it amazing that one party won 99% of those elections that took 2 weeks? The ones that were settled pretty quickly, the result wasn't contested.
Right.
That's because those ballots were all cast.
Well, what gets me is how come they need 2 weeks when the balloting system, the way you count your ballots, is done electronically? You take your ballot, you put it in the machine. I mean, unless Nevada still does it the old-fashioned way, and they sit down and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean,
but even then, 2 weeks is far too much. Listen,
right.
And the bottom line was to show you how ridiculous this is becoming. Nevada actually wanted kudos. They wanted somebody to pat them on the back. They said, well, for Nevada, this is pretty fast. Really? Really? We used to hand count paper ballots faster.
I know, we get the results by midnight usually.
I mean, look, if anybody can't figure out this is all about rigging things, and I don't either way, and it shouldn't be, the greatest freedom that we have as Americans, the foundation of our government, our republic, our representative form of government, is our ability to have a fair election for us to determine who is going to represent us. And it's a travesty that lifelong politicians are now only worried about getting elected and having power. And that's what it is. Because you remember when our forefathers began this process to ensure we didn't have a king, remember they wanted to make George Washington the king.
Right.
And he refused. What did our forefathers say? Our people who were the architects of this country. They said, come in, do a term or two, and go back to your job.
That's the way it was supposed to be.
That's the way it was supposed to be. You're not supposed to spend, 100 years in Congress or the Senate until they have to lead you in, and then you're crapping in your pamper while you're sitting in the Senate. Like some of them we've had. They don't even know what they're doing. I mean, how long has Feinstein been in there? 100 years? 150 years? Pelosi 100? I don't know. I'm being and I know Paul will probably call up and say, your numbers are wrong.
Yeah.
That was just for
Those are facetious.
Yeah, no, it was for dramatic effect.
Yes, it was.
It just seems like 100 years. She's only been in like 40. So, but I mean, that's not what this government was created to be.
Thomas Jefferson said very clearly that every American, and back then it was male, every American male shall serve one term, a 2-year term, in the Congress, and then go back to their life in their business. The rich people, the landowners, the business owners, they served their term in the Senate.
Yeah.
And they got a 6-year term.
Yeah, that's why. We actually had a House of Nobles and Commons.
Exactly.
We just called them by a different name.
Exactly.
But see, people don't know the history. They also, an important point is they talk about Adams and all these people, these rich white men in the wigs. These guys were 19, 18, 19, 20 years old?
Yeah.
They were not old people. They were fundamentally teenagers at the end of their teen years or in their early 20s that were willing to put their life on the line to create a country. Just like the average age of soldiers in Vietnam was 19 years old, those people were young men. They were not old, rich, white people as they try to spin that yarn. It's not true. They were young men. Because remember, rich, old, fat plantation owners aren't going to be toting a musket at Valley Forge. That's not the kind of people that fight in wars.
They're going to be sitting on their porch, drinking their sweet tea.
Mint julep, having a mint julep. But, this is the whole thing, and it irritates me. And believe me, I know it shows, and I don't care. We continue to be our own worst enemy. We continue not to show up. And I'm not blaming these political hacks who stay in forever. I'm not blaming these political hacks who rubber stamp all the spending that we have in the city now, with only one voice, maybe, Michelle Dion, that cares about the taxpayer. You put these people in. It's up to you. You don't like it. You can't make ends meet. You can't pay your bills. You won't be able to pay your heating bill. Dump them. We have an election. Wake up. Like I said, we should have fair elections, and I don't care who wins. If it's fair, you got no complaint. The people have spoken.
That's right.
We remember a time when we had 60 and 70% turnouts in Fall River.
Right.
And in those days, a mayor would not raise your taxes every year because they'd be gone. A city council would not be rubber stamping every single little baloney. In those days, opera money would have been spent to help the people.
That's right.
Not to help special interests.
Right.
But no longer, because you keep electing these boneheads and they don't care about you and they crap all over you and you just watch them. So what's the moral of that story or that rant or whatever you want to call it? Because it's an eyes in the holder. I don't believe in labels. It's just my truth. That is, get some people, stand up, Let's get some new candidates and let's see what they can do. Give them a chance. Give some new people a chance.
Hey, we've got people that have been in office for some 29 years, 30 years, 25 years, and has Fall River changed at all for the better? No. No. As a matter of fact, since they first took office, Fall River is going downhill.
We do have a new train now. I'm all excited. We're going to rent on a new train.
But we got a new
and
train.
That new train's going to bring money and all kinds of people down here to run around Bedford Street and the Flint and listen to shots fired and you know, this is absurd. I mean, it's just an alternate means of transportation to a place. These people, if you're that oblivious to reality, and I'll tell you, you know, again, how many times do they have to promise you that? The checks in the mail, the battleship, USS Massachusetts, the Battleship Cove, the submarine, the Derby horses, the carousel, but we used to call them Derby horses when they were at Lincoln Park, remember?
Yeah.
And but the reality is, all these things, call it a gateway city, call it this, call it that. Just look at Detroit. Detroit had a big head start on us. They've done everything. They called Detroit everything. And Gateway City was not one of them, but that wouldn't have worked either.
No, it wouldn't.
They gave away houses for $1. They couldn't fix it.
Yep.
They did everything they could to fix Detroit. It got to beyond, it's beyond help now. The only way they can ever fix Detroit is nuke it, pave it over, and rebuild it. And maybe it might work. It's gone too far. Fall River is on a precipice of being there.
Yep.
This guy is using opera money, and he's not helping, not a dime toward. He actually took money away from the people to give it to a pet project. And what's going to happen when this opera money all dries up? He's going to run again because he's still got opera money left over? What happens when all these structural deficits bite us in the butt? We're going to be on the verge of receivership. Somebody does an actual audit. I'm going to say that
swear word again.
That expletive, I'm going to use it again, audit. We're going to find out we're so deep in debt that if all the bills came due, they would have to shut the city down. We'd be in receivership because I remember, God, how many years ago? Over a decade? And Linda Pereira was in the room when I was in Boston. And Sean Kadim was the city administrator, and he said this city was $500 million in a hole, and that was what, 15 years ago? How much are we in the hole now? How much are we going to be in the hole when there's no Christmas present scratch ticket called opera money to pay all these bills? Because that's all we're doing. We're sticking our finger in a dike like the little Dutch boy, but that dike is ready to collapse. So next election, let's get some people out there.
Did you get that article I sent you from Commonwealth Magazine about the ESSER money for the school departments?
Yes.
They're all flush with cash, and nobody knows where they're going to spend it.
Yeah.
This is the problem. But they keep asking us for more money. It's amazing.
It's like Ukraine. Just keep sending them money, even though 70% of what they sent them, they can't account for.
Yeah, exactly.
But nobody's going to do an audit on Ukraine either.
Nope, exactly.
So we got our own Ukraine.
That's it. Hey, real quick, while we got a little less than a minute, Pam Laliberte LeBeau went to court last week. Mm-hmm. And she's going back to court for a status hearing on January 12th. Now, she still hasn't been arraigned. Now, if this was you or I, we would already be arraigned, okay? And neither side wants to press the charges. They want the case dismissed. But the district attorney said, no, I'm going to go after this, and we're going to prosecute it. We're going to prosecute this as a felony. So the judge is taking motions under advisement that she'll render a decision on whether or not to dismiss the felony charges and potentially give the misdemeanor charges a magistrate's hearing, which is private, which would be most beneficial to Pam. And I think it would also be beneficial to the alleged victims.
Well, they both want to drop it. We have more important things, though. But this is CJ's teaser for Wednesday's show, because we will start the show with talking about this a little bit
and
more.
guess who got hired as an attorney for it? Reddington.
Big time.
Jay's the career attorney. So I want to thank you all for watching. Remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Wednesday.